Badger Army, it's Nick here. I hope you are all well. Happy February to you all. It's been a while, but I thought I'd make the most of this new light that I have that I can use to sort of change lights and stuff to. As you can tell, it kind of does wonders for my complexion, because my complexion is absolutely nothing to write home about, and hopefully it looks a bit better than that in this. If I turn the light up a little bit, that's better. Should hide it a bit. I was going to do a mukbang for this video, but didn't have time. So instead, I've got some water in a flask, a VoiceOver Network flask, that I won at an expo a year ago today. Do you remember expos, when we'd go out and we'd see people and we'd walk around and we'd sit next to each other in conference rooms and think nothing of it? Blimey, a real back in the war moment, as Badger would call it. So I was going to call what I'd be talking about today as the elephant in the room, but we've had quite a few elephants in the room so far this year, and it's only the start of February. So let's not refer to it that, and just get to the point. It's 2021 and we don't have flying cars. And you know what? Part of me doesn't think that's really a bad thing, given that there's a lot of people out there that neither you nor I nor us as a collective would trust with an electric scooter. I would dread to think what they'd be like with a vehicle that can take off, fly around, quite possibly take out a lamppost, and possibly end up stuck in a tree, or even worse, some poor unsuspecting soul's bedroom window. And that's even before we take into account things like fuel and insurance. How on earth would you insure something like that? And yeah, I know that in the 80s and 90s we were like, oh, we'll be having flying cars. I mean, I remember someone in my class in year 5 did a story where they went to the year 2022, which is now only a year away. It was 3 decades away back then. And people had flying cars and like these sort of like surfboards that you scoot around on. Well, not unlike hoverboards that they were talking about in Back to the Future. It's probably also worth stressing that I'm pretty sure that the original Purge film happens in 2022 as well.
This is your emergency broadcast system, announcing the commencement of the annual Purge.
And to be honest with you, that's probably quite unlikely as well. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. So, you know, I think we can let off our 80s and 90s kids for, I mean, they'll be disappointed, but obviously, yeah, that was maybe being a little bit too hopeful. The thing that it does tell us, though, is that we as humans are not very good at predicting the future. And again, that's okay. I doubt many species can. And at the moment, I don't think anyone wants to have a go at predicting the future. You know, I'm just remembering at the start of this year, January the 3rd, our illustrious leader were like, oh, schools are perfectly safe to go into. Evening of January the 4th, we're closing all schools and GCSEs and A-levels this year won't be happening. I rest my case, people. So yeah, no one really wants to predict what's going on. I know lots of us want to get back to normal, but at the moment, it's hard to predict when that will happen. And obviously, last week or the week before, it was announced that Glastonbury Festival was also cancelled for this year. It's disappointing to hear. It doesn't surprise me, though. Glastonbury are in a they're in a difficult position because they're one of the biggest festivals. You know, they probably have more attendees than any other festival in this country. Of course, Coachella and Stagecoach festivals in America have just been cancelled as well. All of those festivals are quite early on in the festival calendar and all have lots of attendees and lots of organisations. Something that I thought was really interesting was, I remember Glastonbury organiser Emily Evis saying in an interview that if they'd taken a chance and, you know, kept planning into March and then had to cancel then, it could have had huge consequences for future Glastonbury festivals. So in a lot of ways, although I was surprised that they cancelled it when they did, I wasn't entirely surprised, and ultimately they did do the right thing. The one thing that does leave unopened is, does that mean other festivals are going to be following suit? I mean, one part of me is like, it's totally inevitable that it will happen. But then another part of me thinks that it makes perfect business sense for them not to cancel right now. Obviously, lots of people are talking about vaccines and things like that, and how a lot of the older population of the country is being vaccinated. And it really remains to see how that's going to be for younger generations. I mean, the last time I went to Reading Festival was in August of 2017, and the majority of people there, I'd say, were under 35. Very large portion of teens and early 20s. The last time I went to Latitude Festival in Suffolk and Stand and Calling Festival in Hertfordshire was in 2019, and those festivals are a lot more family orientated, so there's a much wider range of ages at those events. When you consider though that a lot of those age ranges being vaccinated is a lot further down the line, then that does make you wonder. I think at the moment, I mean, the vaccines are being rolled out. That's fantastic. But at the same time, I don't think we should be saying, oh, everything will be fine by then, when we can't. Put simply, we just can't. And the one thing that really worries me about lockdown and stuff is the minute that they start to lift some restrictions, a lot of people are like, oh, everything's over, and then go back and act like the whole thing never happened. And I think that happened a lot last year. And yeah, a lot of that was happening last year, and it's probably partly due to that, at least, that we're in the situation we are now with another lockdown. So who knows, maybe, just maybe, some people will have learnt their lesson, although there'll always be a few people who haven't. So I think with festivals and stuff, I think we're very much all waiting and seeing. I mean, I always enjoy going to festivals, but at the same time, I also accept that if it's not safe for us to do that now, then, put simply, then we can't. One thing I will say, though, is that we certainly wouldn't have predicted back in the 80s and 90s that this is where we would be now. Although, to be honest with you, there are some things that the 80s, 90s and even further back people would be impressed by. And they'd probably be impressed by how we have these devices with lots of information on them where we can look stuff up pretty much wherever we are. Okay, not on the underground, but still, we can find all this information that we want with just, a few touches of buttons, and we can find out where we are and where to get things and stuff, and I mean, my teenage self would have loved to have something like this, because every time I went into London, I got lost. So I can tell you what, GPS technology has pretty much saved my bacon a few times. What previous generations might not be so impressed with is how some of us use these devices to mainly look at pictures of cats and get in arguments with strangers. And if you're one of those people who likes to get in random arguments with people you've never met via your phone, well, I certainly wouldn't want to share a flying car with you. I've been Nick, this has been The Badger Show, you've been amazing, and I will see you all soon.